Okay, well, welcome. Thank you, Mr. Laymon. So, my name is Kendall Stafford. I am the team coordinator of Teen Writers Project, and I'm a rising senior in high school. I've eagerly awaited this interview, not just because I'm a admirer of your work, although that does play a large role, don't get me wrong, but I'm also interested in what your work does for others. And as an artist myself, I just want to say thank you for your works, for your vulnerability, for owning your craft, and truly just being authentic to yourself. Um,
Thank you.
of course. So to start off, and give our little Teen Writers Project viewer base a little intro, who are you?
My name is Kiese Laymon. I'm a Black Southern writer from Jackson, Mississippi. I'm a teacher, and I'm just the artist. I'm a Black artist and trying to push the craft as far and wide as I can. And that's really who I am today. It changes every day, but that's who I am today.
Thank you. So, what do you want the world to know about you as a writer besides what you've written?
Wow, I've never been asked that question. Um, I, I don't. I think I want the world to know that I'm very as serious as I am about writing. I'm just as goofy about living. I think life should be like lived laughing and tenderly and goofy as possible. So I think I want the world to know that if you like my writing, thank you. But I'm a very goofy person.
That's good to know. I like when someone can
Yeah.
take a joke and smile and be loose. But
Yeah.
just to get more into your writing, so how would you describe your style of writing? It is so diverse, but we're wondering.
Yeah. You know, I never try to describe or define things and without talking about my relationship to them. So if I'm talking about capitalism or I'm talking about patriarchy, I'm talking about white supremacy or environmentalism, I don't want to just use those words and rely on the reader to, conjure up their relationship to those words. I actually want to walk the reader through my relationships with those words. And I mean, my style is much more dynamic than that. But at the root is that I really want to question my personal relationship to all of these structures and all of these things, because I think when you really dive into your personal relationship, you find other people's relationship, you find history, you find sociology, you find all those things. But I think it's hard to do that unless you really ask yourself, what is my actual relationship to this term or this thing I'm describing?
Okay. Um, when did you know that you wanted to be a writer, and how did you know? And what made you want to be a writer for yourself? And I know this is heavily described in your memoir, Heavy, and it played a large role in your life, but still.
Yeah, I like that question. My mother made me write. I don't know if that made me a writer, but I had to write a lot more than all my friends. Shoot, from the time I can remember, probably from the time I was 5. And then when I was in high school, I worked on my student paper and I won a few awards for like best editorial in Mississippi. And that was the first time I'd seen my writing win anything. I played sports all through high school, middle school, and like I'd won trophies and awards and all conference and stuff like that in basketball, but I never won anything. So when I won something, actually, I think when I won something in my junior year, my third year, I think that's when I was like, oh wow, I can make a profession out of this. But I didn't really believe that. It was like I knew I was gonna go to college. My mother wanted me to be a lawyer, but I knew, so it wasn't like I was like, I'm going to be a writer, but I knew in high school I was going to write. I was going to write. Whether or not people would read it or not, I didn't know, but I knew I had to write to try to make sense of the world. So I think in high school and then in college, I really, really, really started taking it a lot more seriously.
What is your stance on the power of writing?
Oh, I mean, for me, it is it's the single most powerful sort of um thing, I guess, if you want to, or act or practice in my world. I don't want to put that on other people because that's sort of ableist, because there are other people who can't write literally for particular reasons. But in my world, the ability to attempt to describe what you see, what you don't see, the ability to try to create and craft characters and narratives that do not exist, the ability to feel a blank page with like these ink blocked characters and that create all of this mystery, like that's power. Like that is the most powerful thing in my world. And reading, I think, is just as powerful as the writing. You know what I'm saying? So it's the power to connect and the power to go beyond the surface. And I think you can do that without writing, but some of us need writing to do that. I can't do that. I can't. I'm not good at remembering without writing. I'm not good at going beneath the surface. I'm not good at holding myself accountable unless I use writing. So it's the tool I use to keep myself honest and to keep myself um, you know, alive, really.
Do you market yourself as a Black writer, or do you promote yourself as a writer who happens to be Black?
Oh, I'm a Black writer. I'm a Black writer. I'm a Southern Black writer from Mississippi. Um, and and being a Black writer is being a Black writer and being a Southern Black writer and being a Mississippi writer. Those are the three things that I'm sort of most proud of in my life. So yes, I am a writer, but I understand the traditions that made me, and I'm very much a part of those traditions, and those traditions are very Black, very Southern, and very Mississippi. So I'm a Black Mississippi writer until I die.
Why do you write? Is it for inspiration? Is it for release? Is it for expression? And why does that make you proud?
Yeah, I write. Oh, I mean, ultimately, I write to feel okay in this world and to connect myself to people when I feel most alone. What was the second part of that question?
Why does being a writer make you feel proud?
I mean, again, I think it's tied to traditions. Like um, when I was a young person or younger, and I read Morrison, I read Hurston, or when I read Jasmine Ward now, like I see rhythms and imagery and parts of people that I never would have seen had I not read that. And I am proud to be in the tradition of those people. I'm proud to be heavily inspired by them. And I'm proud of the fact that, like, Toni Morrison, Jasmine Ward, James Baldwin, Richard Wright, Margaret Walker Alexander, like those people are my primary audiences when I'm writing too. In addition to writing to young people and writing to a younger version of myself and writing to all these different sensibilities, like I'm writing to a tradition. And so I'm very proud to be a part of that tradition, because those people wanted us to be as like abundant as we could be. And for me, I can't do abundance without writing. I know some other people can do it some other ways, through like talking and laughing or dance or singing or sculpture, but I can't connect to that tradition if I don't write. So I'm proud. I'm proud that they gave us that tool.
This is the perfect segue into this question, but this that Black abundance, and y'all don't even know. Tell me more. I have to know
Yeah,
more.
this that Black abundance. Well, again, that's a sentence that my friend Derek Lathon Carlisle, his favorite word in eighth grade was abundance. Favorite word in seventh grade was abundance. He brought it to eighth grade. Eighth grade was the first year we went to school with white kids. We went to all Black small Catholic school before that. And when we went to the school, understandably, sadly, like the teachers, thought that like when Derek took out his grapefruit and started cutting it up in the morning for breakfast before class, they were afraid that he had a knife. And, early on at that school, they kept trying to police the way we talked. And so one of the things that we didn't consciously do this, but we just pushed back against this like uber discipline and uber policing by like using words that made sense and vocabulary words that didn't make sense. So one of the words that we used over and over that first few weeks of school was abundance. And in the book Heavy, there's a chapter, I mean, the section called Black Abundance. And there's a chapter called Meager, and it ends with that sentence, like, it's this that it's that Black abundance, and they don't even know. And literally, like, the people we were referring to had no idea what we meant by Black abundance. They had no idea that we were Black and abundant. But by that point, it didn't matter what they knew. You know what I mean? We were keeping ourselves whole, keeping ourselves happy, in ways that a lot of times people could or could not understand. But we, at that point, it was like, you can jump on this if you want, you can understand the language we're using if you want to, but this that Black abundance. And we don't believe but we know. And that was enough for us. So
Who are your literary influences?
yeah, I have many. Jesmyn Ward. In terms of contemporary writers, it'd be Jesmyn Ward, Robert Jones, Deisha Philyaw. In terms of like just the tradition, like the tree is Morrison, it's Baldwin, it's Ellison, it's Gwendolyn Brooks, it's definitely Richard Wright, it's Margaret Walker, it's Nikki Giovanni. So I mean, I find influences everywhere, but I'm also influenced by like cartoons, by sitcoms, I mean, lots of music, but literary authors, those are the ones that influenced me the most. Octavia Butler too, I'll put in there.
What kind of music? What kind of cartoons? I need to know more.
I mean, I listen to a lot of, I mean, I love rap music, I love hip hop, I listen to a lot of music. It just finds me like this when the pandemic hit, for some reason, I just really started listening to a lot of King Von, which made no sense actually. But I was listening to a lot of King Von, and then I started listening to a lot of like Billie Eilish, but not the whole album, but like When the Party's Over. I mean, that song, the way it built, I tried to write an essay that built the way that song built. In terms of cartoons, I like to watch the old Super Friends. I don't know, you're very young, but there used to be this cartoon called Smurfs, which was kind of funny because they would always like change the verb to like Smurf. So they'd be like, "How'd you do?" And be like, "I Smurfed it." Smurfs were little green, blue. Do you know what Smurfs are?
Oh yeah, there was like a live action movie a couple years ago,
Oh,
maybe
okay,
like
okay,
10 years
okay.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was all in I was all into the Smurfs. I was into like Voltron. Um, I was, it's yeah. I used to I was into and I still like, so when I say was, I mean I am, because I still watch these on YouTube like every other day. I'm trying to create a cartoon now. But I can't talk about that yet. But I'm working on
Ooh, you
it.
can't talk
Yeah.
about it?
Nah, not yet, not yet. But it's gonna be, but if I pull it off, it's gonna be real cool though.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, we'll see. Maybe you can give us a little insider
Yeah.
maybe later. We'll see.
You're
Okay.
right. Right.
How do you remain authentic and stay true to your art in such a challenging profession?
I just think you have to be honest about what you just said. Like, we want to lie. We want to be lied to. We want people to tell us we're better than we are. Some of us. Um, Sometimes we have problems even seeing, we want to, sometimes we want people to tell us that we're worse than we are. You know what I mean? So like I start every day by asking myself what it is I want to lie about and what it is I want to be lied to about. And that's hard. You know what I mean? Like that's very hard. But I I do that because I just think there's so much in this world that encourages us to deceive not just the people we love, but deceive ourselves. And I just want to try to start every day not trying to deceive myself by being honest about the fact that I would like to deceive myself. And I think if you start there, you can work through what people call authenticity a bit easier. But being honest with yourself is still, I think, the hardest thing in the world. I don't care who you are, what you do, when you were born, whatever. It's very hard to be honest with yourself, which means it's really hard to be honest to people around you too. So I think once you understand that, you just try to use your art to get you closer. That's what I try to do.
Was that reasoning used when you repeated the line, "You wanted me to tell a lie" during your memoir?
Yeah, yeah, because my mom, I mean, that's literally the truth. My mama didn't want me to write that book. She would have rather me written some book that was, here's this, black boy who had a sort of rough upbringing, but he came out of it and everything is great and hunky dory. You know what I mean? Like that's what the kind of understandably too, that's the kind of book my mama wanted me to write if I wrote a book about myself. And she definitely didn't want me to talk or implicate her in any way. But sometimes we have to not write the lies that we are paid to write or encouraged to write. Sometimes, I mean, I get profit motive. I get we all got to eat, but sometimes we might have to be better. Like try to use the art to be better as people, as family. And I just wanted to do that with Heavy. That's what I was trying to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
How would you best explain the duality of your memoir's title, Heavy?
Yeah, duality is a great word, but I think heavy. I love that word because in that book and in my world, it means so much. It means a literal like weight. It means like depth. Some people can be like, "Oh, that's a heavy." Oh, that sister over there is heavy. Um, it can mean like emotional like volatility. Damn, how you feeling? All heavy in my heart. It could mean like when you do something good, like did you rock it? Man, yo, I was heavy. That was heavy. You know what I mean? So I think it means a lot in that book, but it definitely is interested in like this sort of like weighted sadness that I think a lot of us have, partially because of all these structures that I talked about before. But it also can, what I wanted to ultimately signify is like the only way we have a possibility of working through this as people is if we hold on to each other and make ourselves heavier. Because isolated and alone, where nobody's heavy enough to take on like this world that we have um, sort of been given by the people who left it for us. We got to be heavier. I don't know if it's possible to be heavier unless you expose yourself to people you supposedly love. Like people need to be able to see my heart. If I say they love me, I want to be able to see their heart. That can make us heavier. I think a heavier union is harder to defeat than a light like fractured one. So it means all of that.
What made you want to publish, and when did you know you were ready for a book deal?
Shoot, I was ready for a book deal at like 19, 20. Nobody was offering me one, but I wrote my first book probably in 19 and tried to get it published. Nobody wanted it. And I think about how crazy it was like literally 20 years later. Yeah, because I was like 1993. I was 1993 was when I first sent my stuff out to agents and tried and editors and tried to get this deal. And it wasn't until 2013 when my book actually both my books came out like in the summer 2013. So I thought I was ready 20 years earlier, and I was ready. I wasn't ready to be the writer I would be 20 years later, but I had some art. That's the thing about publishing. Like I think we sometimes like look at it like when I was coming up at least people would be like, "Oh, are you published?" As if that meant some marker of like, your value as an artist. When really being published means often one person had decided that they were going to put you in their magazine or on their website or in their book. And I mean, it's significant, but I don't think it means what we think it means. It doesn't mean that the world has decided like you're a great writer. It means that one person decided they want something you wrote to go in something that they own. And I was really happy when my books came out at 30, 39 as opposed to 19. But shoot, I was ready for them books to come out at 19. I wasn't, the books wouldn't have been anywhere near as good. Um, but I was ready. I was ready. I was ready. I think I was ready.
With that perspective, do you think age equals experience?
Yeah, but it doesn't equal good experience. You know what I mean? Like age, yeah, like you can't deny that age is experience, but like, what's the qualifier of that experience? Donald Trump has a lot more experience than I do, but I mean, I don't think that man is better at anything than I am, except lying and tearing up nations. You know what I'm saying? So like, you can be an old fool, and you can be a young, wise, kind savant. It's just like, what do you do with the experience? I'm not one of these old people who likes to like talk down to young people, because I remember when older people talked down to me, and I was like, I'm from Mississippi, so I was very kind and yes, ma'am, yes, sir, and all that kind of shit. But I'm not talking down to young people. Young people actually have better ideas than we do. You know what I mean? They might not know how to implement those ideas, and maybe they do, but you know, I don't think all experience is good experience or valuable experience or anything like that. I think sometimes some of us have made a lifetime of being a fool, and foolish experience that isn't checked is like the worst kind of experience to have. You just infect people instead of inspiring people, and I don't want to do that.
Wow. Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, you want to inspire people. You don't want to infect them. You want to make sure that you're making an impact, whether it's just writing your room and knowing that your voice is being spoken out, or whether it's publishing and having that one
Sure.
person give you a chance. Every single piece matters because it makes
Yeah,
this bigger picture. And I wholeheartedly believe that. And I'm glad that you're able to express that perspective in so many beautiful works. Um,
absolutely.
I want to ask you more about your craft. So, as like a writer, do you have a regular writing schedule, or do you kind of just have this big spark of inspiration and just start writing?
Nah, I know people who write that way, and it works for them. That way doesn't work for me. I have to write every day. Um, it's just the same writing practice I had my whole life. I write for an hour and a half too before I go to bed, wake up, write for an hour and a half too. And during the day, I get those like bursts of inspiration. And when I get those, whether it's on my phone or whether I'm handwriting or whether I'm on my computer, I'm writing. But I try to write new stuff during the week, even though it's hard. And I try to like revise that stuff on the weekends. And that's just my process. You know what I'm saying? Like that means I write a lot of sentences, and most of those sentences are not good, but I couldn't get to decent sentence unless I wrote a lot of sentences. I mean, I know myself now, like if I have to write, if somebody was like, we need you to write 10 sentences by tomorrow, I got to write like 150 sentences to find out the 10 that work. And that's, so I'm not one of those people who wait to the last minute, because if I wait to the last minute, it's not going to be good. But I know people who do wait till last minute who are inspired by that deadline, and they are able to crank out wonder. But I can't do that. If I wait till the last minute, it's going to be trash.
Um, how important do you think it is for writers to belong to writing groups or attend workshops or conferences
Yeah.
or have a community of writers?
Yeah, I don't like to push people in ways that their writerly hearts and souls aren't like inclined to be into, but um I think community is crucial for the art that we all want to create. And it's interesting as writers, because we're still going to have to be alone. You're gonna have to be alone, and when you write, you're gonna sort of have to be alone. Even if you're in a writing group and you're writing in the same space with somebody, some point you got to be alone with those thoughts. And I think isolation and aloneness is something writers have to cultivate. But at the same time, I think most of the writing that I know of that has inspired me is writing that has also been come out of communities. Like Morrison was heavily influenced by a community of mostly Black women writers and artists. You know what I mean? Like Jasmine has a smaller community of writers and artists who inspire her, but that work comes out of there. Baldwin was searching for community his entire life. I think the same thing with Wright. I think the same thing with Zora Neale Hurston as well. So I think community is crucial. But again, I understand some people who are like, I don't really need that. I do need that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I feel like in a way, it was almost a trick question. I feel like people, in the same way that they need to be alone with their work, they also need support. I feel like everyone needs just that one like pat on the shoulder, or knowing that someone's there, or having just like someone to even edit your work or have a different eyes on it. So, um,
Yeah, and you know what? So much of this writing thing, that's a great point. That's
mhm.
a great point, Kendall, because so much of this writing thing also, for better and worse, is about failure. And when you fail and you fall, it helps sometimes to fall back into the arms or whatever of a community, of people who you don't have to lie to about failure. Writing is all about, we're always writing, we're always submitting stuff. Some people are, we are always getting rejected. We're always wondering if our work is good enough. And I think sometimes it's important to be like that person people can fall and fail on, and that person who's okay failing. You know what I mean? Like you have to be okay failing in this. But the question is like, are you going to be tender to yourself, or have you put yourselves in communities that are going to like, be kind and honest with you through that failure? So that's one of the biggest reasons I think in writing communities are important too. So
Yeah, I agree. What kind of writing are you seeing too much of and which could stop publishing, like right now? You have 3 seconds. One, two, three.
oh man. Um that's a tough question. I mean, I'm thankful for all of the writing that I'm about to describe, but I would like to see a year or two where we don't have any more books where like black writers or writers of color are trying to convince white people to stop being racist. Like I get the importance of those books. I definitely get the importance of those books historically, but I wonder what would happen if we stopped trying to do that, and not in books as much, but in like essays and whatnot. And that isn't all. And I'm not at all saying we don't need to critique white people. I'm just saying that the critique that white people, you are invested in white supremacy. I just think this, we might have exhausted all the ways you can say that in essay or book form. But I think, for development of writers, sometimes you need to write that to develop beyond it. But I think the problem is once you do it sometimes as a younger writer and you see it's lucrative, you keep on doing that same writing. And I just think, I get it, but I'm just bored by that writing. You know what I mean? Like I just think there's so many other things to think and talk about other than the ways that white people fail. And I think white people fail tremendously every day, intentionally every day. But I'm just not interested in reading more books by us about how we wish they would stop. I mean, I just don't want to read that, right? But I get why it needs to be written. I just don't want to read it.
Interesting. Well, to kind of reverse the question, what kind of writing are you not seeing enough of and wish we had more of?
Yeah, I wish we had more serious books that were also super funny. You know what I mean? I'm really into books that are at once um like appear to be wholly rigorous, but also like just funny as hell. Because I think sometimes as artists we're taught you can do one, you got to be rigorous, you got to be serious, or you got to be funny and like slapstick. And I just want to see more like books that make you laugh to where you can't breathe, but also I want those same books to be talking about shit that is really serious. Yeah, so I want to see more books that like handle the rigorous and the comical with like the same sort of like weight.
I agree with that. I love that statement. I think that is absolutely so true because us as a society, it feels like if things get a little too intense, like our hearts tighten and we close our ears and then
Right,
nothing people say gets through and then what's the point? So having those
right,
lighthearted comments or maybe even those jokes in between those statements is powerful, just as powerful as someone just writing down facts.
that's
Like your work and also I I love climate change policy, but also it's kind of depressing, when you hear that, oh, your planet's about to be ruined. So when I listen to one of these podcasts, I know, and I'm like, oh, yeah, like that's fun. Like, oh, okay, this mountain's like toppling over and people are like
right.
literally dying. I'm like, oh, this is super sad. But like, it's just there's this podcast, How to Save a Planet, and I heard you talk about environmental policy, so I thought maybe I'd recommend it. And they talk about climate change and different things and how we're kind of in a tough spot here, but they make jokes so that people listen. And just like how in your writing, you made jokes and made it towards lighthearted at the same time
Right.
as being heavy, those elements are so important because they get people to listen and they get people to
So
let you in. And
I
I
think
think that
so.
is just the best thing an artist can do, know how to balance.
Do you do that in your work?
Yes, I do. I think it's important, you know, I think that if it's obvious, you can see people, especially in their body language, if they stiffen or if someone's
Yeah.
reading it and you can kind of feel them tighten up and not really release, or they feel like it's only hitting the surface, and that's when you know you need to like make a change. For me, when I write poems or when I write short stories, if it feels heavy, not to play on your word, but I changed up. I changed the tone. I add a little joke.
Yeah.
Maybe I add some
Yeah.
weird like lingo in there just to shake it up, you know?
Definitely, definitely. Tonal, that's it. Like we're talking right, because this is a conversation really about tone. And I just want to see different textures and different tones in more of our writing. And you know, I know we can do it, but I think sometimes we're afraid because we think, you know, if you laugh, you're not being serious. And if you're not being serious, you won't be taken seriously. But if you're not sometimes utilizing the comic strategically, you won't be taken at all. Like, you know, people have to feel. I'm with you. I agree with you 100%.
You talk about textures. I would describe my writing texture as rainbow crochet, for instance, you know, where there's those bumps, but also the color and it's also memorizing to watch. But how would you describe your texture as a writer?
That is a brilliant question. I don't know if you ever had this thing from Dairy Queen called a peanut butter parfait,
I
but
have.
it's like, oh, you have?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you know, it's like it looks like a big ass sundae, and it's soft serve ice cream, and then there's like chocolate, and then there's peanuts. So I remember that dessert not because it's my favorite dessert, but it was this dessert my mama would take me to get like maybe 4 times a year when I'd done something that she was remotely proud of. She wouldn't tell me she was proud, but she'd be like, "Key, want to go to Dairy Queen." I love that. I love like the coldness of the ice cream, the hotness of the hot fudge, like the roasted like ness of the peanuts. And I also you love how in the peanut butter parfait, you know, because it's in that long tube, it seems like you could eat on it forever. Like when you think it's done, there's still more at the bottom. I want my writing to be textured like that. I want it to be cold. I want it to be hot. I want it to also feel like, you know, like you're feeling something like substantial, like warm nuts in it, like those warm peanuts that are in it. And I want there to be some depth. I want you to kind of dig in and think you're near the bottom, but you know, you keep going, you keep going, and even when you think you're done, you look at the container and there's shit all around it, you know, like there's chocolate and there's peanut butter and there's still like peanut remnants. So that's the kind of texture I'm going for. I've never thought about this before until this second, but I think that's what I want to usually do. I think I want to try to do different things, but that's what I usually want to try to do, create a peanut butter parfait for folks.
Wow, beautiful imagery.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That kind of makes me want some Dairy Queen.
I know I want some Dairy Queen right now. Yeah.
Right. I don't know if that's like a southern thing, but we'll
Right.
see.
Where are you where are y'all located?
We're actually located everywhere. Hashtag Teen Writers Project is a worldwide nonprofit based in
Okay.
Texas. Yeah,
Okay, okay,
so
okay.
it's really, really cool. Yeah, that's it's just really nice. So how would you suggest to other people to develop a writing style?
Read. You know, I mean, I know that sounds like hey, I know some people might hate to hear this, but I think you have to read as a writer, meaning like you have to read looking for different writerly styles. And then ultimately, I think you want to be innovative. You want to try to create a style that you haven't seen yet. And sometimes to do that, you have to imitate styles that you actually like. It's like anything, like in basketball, you know, I played basketball in high school, played basketball in college. You know, the basketball player I wanted to be in high school, I wanted to be like Charles Barkley. I was just trying to imitate. By the time I got to college, I lost a ton of weight. I was trying to be my whoever I could be. I wasn't trying to be anybody else. I was just trying to be me, you know. So I wasn't like rebounding and, you know, pushing the ball and, you know, playing as aggressive as Barkley played, ferocious as Barkley played. By the time I got to college, I was, you know, trying to pass a lot more, shoot a lot of mid-range jumpers. And for me, that was like my way of innovating. But I think you have to watch, you have to read a lot, but most importantly, you have to want to do something you haven't seen before. But you can't do that unless you've seen before. You know what I mean? You can't create a new literary writing style without knowing the literary writing styles that predate it. You know what I'm saying? So like, I think you have to read. You have to read as a writer, and then you have to try to create something you haven't seen.
Understood. You know, you have to know where you've been to know where you're going.
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
how important is genre when developing your writing?
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I mean, genre and tradition, I think, are two different things. I think genre, there's one argument I make that like genre is more like market driven. You know what I mean? Like, you know, is it going to be in the mystery section? Is it going to be in the black section? Is it going to be in the Western sections? You know, but what happens if you write a black book that is a Western that is also a mystery? Like, what section is that? Well, that's just fiction. But, you know, I think you have to put a genre on it in order to market it a particular way. But traditions, I think, are different, you know. But and I think understanding the traditions that you are a part of, or like that you long to be a part of, is really important. I just don't know if it's important to call those traditions mystery, romance, literary, you know, dystopian. I'm not sure if those. I'm not sure, but I do think tradition is way more important than genre.
Okay, so I want to ask you a little fun question. If you could make a title and a category for your writing specifically, what would you call it? Would it be like some super cool, funky name, or would it be like your initials? You know, personalize it.
My genre.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Is that
Like
what you
your
okay?
style or more of your
My
writings.
style, my style. Yeah, I think my style would be that black abundance. Like that's my style. I write that black abundance shit. Like that's what I do. That's what I think I do at least. So it's that black abundance. That's what it is.
I love that. I love how full circle that phrase is.
Yeah.
Uh, so as a teen writer and for our audience, what else should teen writers know about the process of writing? Because you said you went from 19 thinking that you're ready to 39 and being published. That's a long time. And I feel like a lot of people are interested in how you kept that motivation, how you kept that drive during such a long period of your life.
Yeah, you know what, but you know, part of it is because I started early. So, you know, when I was my second year in college, I was trying to send a book off to get published. And then I was teaching college when my book actually did get published. So it's different now because the internet has actually changed it even more. But I just think this is tied to that community question. I think, you know, you have to continue. You know, you get drive from being read, and we can act like that's not true, but you know, you need people to read you to continue to write stuff that people might read. And so I just think on the base level, you have to connect with some sort of community of people who are going to read you. And then I think in those communities, you want to talk about the craft, the work, the content, as much as you talk about the experience of trying to get the craft, the work, and the content published. And I just think like as young writers, you can do that. You know, you can talk about the craft, you can talk about the content, you can talk about all this stuff, and you can also talk honestly with other people about the writing, about getting it. But the trick that I would give, like like the the secret is like you will have more doors open for you as a writer if you attempt to open more doors for other people who are writing. Like and so sometimes we just get sort of wrapped up in like what, you know, what can communities do for us, what can publishers do for us, what can magazines do for us, what can editors do for us. But I just think like we really have to also verse ourselves in being useful and for other writers, like coming along, like trying to help them, like workshopping, reading stuff, but also sometimes hooking people up with like, if we have a connect, you want to share that connect. You know what I mean? Like that selfish shit that like, you know, a lot of us hear about as writers, it's real out there. And I think you combat that by being generous, you know, and especially if you expect generosity, you have to be a generous person, especially when it comes to this community, art communities.
Hmm. How do you think academic writing influences writers?
Great question. I mean, that's a long, you know, I could talk a long time about that. I think sometimes academic writing is only talked about in one way. I think we forget that there's so many different ways to write academic writing. And I'll also say that I think sometimes we want to believe that what we call academic writing, like exist in like, you know, like these like cloistered hills of academia. And that's true. But also just think, you know, a lot of the writing that influenced me came from academia. Like, you know, Bell Hooks influenced me tremendously. You know, Cornel West didn't influence me as a writer. He influenced me as like a vocabulary maker, because Cornel West gave us some vocabulary. Bell Hooks gave us vocabulary and taught us how to walk in and out of vocabulary. Those are like academic writing pillars. You know, those two people. So I'm always just trying to encourage people to not write off academic writing. Um, like understand like all of the different ways we can write academically. But I also think academic writing needs to be stretched even more. Do you know what I mean? Like I have friends who do academic writing, and when they go into it, they tell themselves, I have to be boring now. And see, I just think if you telling yourself you got to be boring to write a paragraph or two or three or four, you can't then be upset that other people don't want to read it because they think it's boring. So I just think like, you know, the rules of the genre or tradition, they're there for a reason, but also just think all these rules are always there to just be expanded and broken. And that's how you get more sensibilities and more people into it. So I'm not shitting on academic writing. I think just think it could be expanded, but I also think it is more expansive than we think.
What can you tell us about support for writers when they're writing books, such as fellowships, grants, and sponsorships? Are those necessary and possible for teens or adults to even obtain, or is self-publishing the only way to go?
Self-publishing is definitely not the only way to go. There are a ton of writing fellowships out there, like specific to state and region. You know, in my state, Mississippi, like next week, I'm going to talk at this McMullen Writers Workshop, which is a writing workshop in Jackson that is just for writers in the Mississippi, specifically in the South. I have my own thing called the Catherine Coleman Literary Initiative, where we, you know, team up with like writers throughout Mississippi, work with them on workshopping, getting them more acclimated to revision, you know, and that's just in Mississippi. But I think, you know, there's bigger places like Tin House. Tin House, I think, is one of the most incredible workshops. Cobby Conum, if you do poetry. Log Haven, I'm on this board for Log Haven, which is this incredible writing community out of Tennessee that you get to go to for weeks. They pay you to come there for weeks and do some writing. So, you know, this is where the internet is important. I think, you know, where if you want writing workshops and you want some writing communities wherever you are, I just think you type in writing workshop in the state or the city you are and see what comes up. But those things that matter. Like I teach at a lot of them, and the communities that are created there, like those communities are there often for life. So I would encourage everybody to do that.
What careers exist for writers besides writing?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, the thing though is like we all like almost everybody has to write in their career. I mean, even if you're writing a note, if you're writing an email, if you're writing a memo, you know what I mean? Like that's what I always tell my students, like, you know, if you've written text messages today or DMs or something, like you've written, like you've thought about how to craft something, you've thought about what you want to say, you've thought about how it's going to be received, and then you push send. It's different, but it's actually absolutely the same as any sort of writing we would do. So yeah. So I would just say the first thing I would just say is like we need to own all of the ways that we do write. Do you know what I mean? And not think that when we're actually writing, we're not writing. So sometimes people are like, I'm not a writer, and they write when they'll tell me that while they're texting. I'm like, well, what are you what I mean, like, what are you doing? And I'll be like, I'm writing. It's not the same. Okay, but it's writing. So we don't need to act as if sometimes that we're not. So I would just say like the different ways that we are encouraged to write sentences to communicate. I would like to see more of those ways in books. You know, what happens if there's a book completely made of text messages or DMs? You know what I'm saying? Like we just need to own the multiplicity of ways we communicate, because most of them all are writing based, you know, for better words.
In your speaking, I recognize a lot of breaking boundaries, like in tones and all these different things kind of hidden within your writing and what you're saying. Like in your, hold up, I'm gonna rephrase it because I feel like I got lost. I feel like as you're speaking, I could recognize that you have a tendency to break boundaries. Where do you feel like that spurs from?
Mm. I mean, I think it stems from having a mother that made very firm boundaries for me as a young person. And you know, I think, I mean, and I appreciate and I thank her for that. But you know, when you make super, 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 super stern boundaries for people, you know, young people are gonna experiment and try to break the boundary. And I think, you know, my mom, the church I went to, my family, the schools. I think sometimes they just tried to put bounds on us or put boundaries around us that weren't really healthy. You know, I got kicked out of school for taking a library book out of the library without checking it out and bringing it back. You know, like I broke some rule with that, but like that's a boundary that shouldn't exist. There's not a child on this planet that should be kicked out of school for taking a library book out of a library without checking it out and bringing it back to a school that they pay tuition to go to. There's not a school, you know what I'm saying? So like I think once you realize that there's these boundaries that are made for you by adults, and some of those boundaries are like really repressive, you are obligated to break those boundaries. You are obligated to break through and not necessarily try to harm, but you know, but to also let people know who are trying to like contain you, that there's parts of your body, parts of your heart, and most importantly, parts of your imagination that will not be contained. And that's how I feel. But there are also parts of our boundaries and imaginations and beings that absolutely need to be more contained. You know what I'm saying? But I think the job of a writer slash human being is to experiment and find out what those boundaries are. You know, I do break a lot of boundaries, but I'm also really afraid of a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm very honest with myself about the things that I'm terrified of. And I'm trying to be honest with myself about the things that like I'm going to break every single time you put them in front of me. But I think it's important to realize like that the things that we're fearful of are just as important as the things that we necessarily need to obliterate. Um, yeah.
What do you feel like is your biggest fear and why is it holding you back?
Wow. I mean, honestly, I think my biggest fear is nobody ever asked this question, but I think my biggest fear is like being super successful. Like I'm really scared of being super successful. Like I'm also really scared of being rich, like super rich. Like I mean, and I've never talked about this. I don't probably shouldn't be talking about it right now, but yeah, I'm terrified. I'm terrified of that. You know, like so sometimes I get like these incredible opportunities to do a lot of things, and I'm just be like, nah. And sometimes I'm like, you know, I fool myself to be like, I'm saying no because I need to say no. But sometimes I'll say yes to a whole lot of other things that will not be as meaningful for me. And then I'll say no to things that I should say yes to. So um I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to get better at that, but I'm afraid sometimes. I'm afraid. I'm literally afraid of flying. I hate flying. I'm afraid of heights. But I think metaphorically, sometimes I'm really also afraid of heights. Like I'm afraid of like soaring. Because I think I have obligation to walk on the ground.
I like the way you put that. You're afraid of
Yeah.
flying because you feel like you're obligated to walk on the ground.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It's so
Wordsmith. So,
fun.
like, you're not really down for the Kim K, Courtney Kardashian kind of life. None of that. Oh, only
I
I like the
mean,
tequila brand, having my own
nah. You
makeup
know what's
line kind
interesting?
of thing.
It's like it was like a week ago. You know, I'm a contributing editor at Vanity Fair, and they asked me to do this feature on Puffy. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I thought it was gonna be like my talking to Puff on Zoom, doing a whole bunch of conversations, and then making a piece. And then they were like, oh, now Puffy wants you to come out to Malibu and spend 2 or 3 days with him. And you know, I should have done it, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like I want to see how Puffy lives and I want to try to write something about it. But then I was like, you know, it's a pandemic. Do I want to get on an airplane? Somebody else could do it better. So eventually I was like, nah, I can't do it. But I'm saying that's an example of like, I probably should have got on that plane, peeped Puffy's lifestyle up close, written a piece about it, and kept it moving. But I fool myself into believing that like somebody could do it better, and that I didn't need to do it. But I also think sometimes there's a part of that means like I didn't. Sometimes I don't know if I want what comes along with like the notoriety of doing something really well. Sometimes. So.
I like that. I mean, I get that. I think it's
Yeah.
important to kind of listen to yourself and listen to your responses to things and listen to your intuition inside and not feel
Right.
pressured to do things that you don't want to do.
That's
Um,
right.
so, what else should we know about the Kiese Laymon? Like anything that you didn't tell us in your memoir that you feel like you should share, or any things you want to go off your chest, or
Nah, I think I
any new
shared
projects
enough.
you're working on?
I mean,
Come on,
yeah, I
spill
could
the
talk to
tea.
you. I definitely think I shared enough with y'all, but I'm working on some new stuff. I just republished this book, Long Division. I'm
Hmm.
thinking it's gonna be made into a TV show.
I
I'm
see it in the
working on
background.
yeah, I'm working on some other writing, some other television writing. Heavy is gonna be made into a film. Issa Rae got Heavy, and they're making her company is making it into a movie, and I'm just writing. I'm just trying to write stuff. Just trying to write stuff. That's it. I'm pretty boring.
No, you're not pretty boring. I mean, like literally, like your work inspires and it ignites and it expresses a vulnerability and it gives voice to different people. So no, you're not boring. Like you're a writer, you're an artist, and that is powerful. That is so powerful. So I want to thank you for sharing your journey and for being here and for speaking the truth and for giving some tips and tricks. I think that's super important too, like give back to the community. Um, but I know that I've really appreciated you being here. And I know that hashtag Team Writers Project has really appreciated you being here. And I want to wish you a good day, a good night, whatever your time zone is. And
Right.
I think that's the conclusion of our interview. So
Thank you so much, Kendall. It's been an incredible interview. You got a future in this, the writing and the interviewing, because it's so hard to interview people. So thank you for all of this. I'll talk to you soon.
okay,
All
bye.
right. Bye.